Well, hello everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am making a video for a machine that I have completed restoration for and is going to be listed soon. This is a free arm sewing machine. It is a vintage machine and it says Viking Eaton on it, but it is not made by any company called Viking or Eaton. It is actually a Brother sewing machine. Many of you know the name Brother. They're one of the large producers of modern sewing machines today. But like Janome and many of the others, back in the 1950s, they started making sewing machines for sale in North America under what would be called private label, what today we call private label brands. And so even though it may say Eaton on it, you are looking at basically a Brother sewing machine posing as an Eaton. And I don't know what the ordering numbers were for the Eaton. Eaton was a department store. And I don't know how many they would have ordered. Sometimes a manufacturer would make a few changes here and there for, they might add some sort of styling motif. Obviously the logo is different. But if you ever look for let's say you're looking at a Brother Riviera. If you were to go online and look at those, they made both a flatbed version and they made a free arm version like the one you see here. And they look exactly, and I do mean exactly the same, except for the color scheme. The Brother machines were done in a sort of off-white cream color, and then all of the knobs and the levers are bright orange, and I do mean bright orange. And then, of course, to make the Eaton seem like a different machine, of course, it has a nice, soft, neutral color scheme, which is very reflective of the late 1960s and early 70s, which is when this machine dates from. Now, I mentioned to all of you when I was talking about this machine earlier, or actually I was talking to you about the Kenmore free arm machine. And all of the machines of this period, the more features that they offered, if you got the higher end versions, and this would have been one of those, you would have gotten a number of features on the machine. And as features were added, they became mechanically more complex in an engineering sense. And so the process, the listing I have for this machine, I'll list all the things I did to the machine, all of the procedures. But what I did when I took the lid off of this machine, I did the same thing you all have seen me doing. You saw me apply penetrant products to the Kenmore free arm, and it's still sitting waiting for help or some sort of intervention. We'll see what happens with the Kenmore. But this machine had basically not had nearly as much use. And when I got it, I noticed that, of course, the levers, they were a little stiff, and so was the knob here, and so forth. So I did what I always suggest that all of you do. I took the lid off and I began adding penetrant products. I think it was the 3-in-1 penetrant oils, and I let it sit for about a week. And again, just as I had imagined, there was nothing on the machine broken at all. It was in perfectly fine condition, except for the fact that it had sat dormant for a while. And once I did that, I began to add sewing machine oil to some of the linkages. Now, one of the things you'll notice, and you've seen this in the Kenmore video, is that when you have built-in features, remember there's no software in this machine, all of its fancy features are all of the things it can do are done mechanically. And so, for example, here is this is your stitch width adjustment. Over here, M is for basically your straight stitch. To the left, you have blind stitch. And over to the right, you have something that people used a lot in the 70s for those big double knit fabrics that they were using to make all kinds of clothing with. And it has a bit of a stretch stitch built in over here. Very few people use stretch stitches, but anyway, that's a feature that was popular at the time. And of course, it has a feed dog drop. And like a lot of features, these features were not moving, but because I was patient, I waited a week, and sure enough, I went back and started oiling. Now, one of the things I did was I started to move the lever here, and what you'll find is once you've used the penetrant products and then you go back with sewing machine oil, you'll notice you should. Sometimes it requires a use of heat like a hair dryer, but I didn't need that here. And you can start to see movement in the different features. You can even hear the little clicking sound. Now, one of the things that might be helpful for you is, let's say you've got a machine like this and you start to waken up the features that have been sleeping for a long time. What you'll find is you'll be able to see the linkages that connect to the particular device you're trying to restore. And you'll find that it is connected to yet more linkages. So again, the mechanical underpinnings of these machines are far more involved than, say, a good old-fashioned Singer 15 class, right? Now, I'm not saying that those machines don't require waking up, and they require just as much TLC, but these, I find that once you get one part of the machine moving, you'll want to kind of keep the lid open and look inside, right? Keep your machine unplugged, of course, and you're going to look inside and you'll see other linkages that are waiting for the same maintenance, okay? Just remember the scene, you know, when Dorothy starts oiling the Tin Man, you know, and once you get one part loose, then the other parts want to get lubrication. And so it's kind of intuitive. It sounds a little odd, but it's really the same as what you've been seeing me do, again, in that Kenmore video where you've seen me use, I've used WD-40 and I've used the 3-in-1 oil. But what you want to do is, those linkages may or may not be marked in a manual, but that's okay. You will notice metal parts moving against metal. And of course, this machine has had a whole host of overhaul. I've gone through the entire machine, the motor, the belt. She has a new belt. Everything has been checked and adjusted, whether it's the bobbin winder. I went underneath the machine, and for whoever chooses to purchase this machine, you'll see in the photos, the bottom chassis of the machine is bolted to the main frame of the machine. I took that off, and there's a nice little pad down there that's designed to catch oils or grease, and I took that off and replaced it with a nice new felt pad. I went underneath, I took the lid of the free arm off and went inside and cleaned. There wasn't really much to clean under there, but I certainly lubricated everything. And of course, took out the hook, took out the bobbin case and the race or the race cover, and of course cleaned and lubricated that area. So every one of the areas of the machine has been tended to, and as almost every machine ever does, once it's been given the maintenance it was waiting for, it came right to life. So it was very exciting to see. It really sews an incredible stitch. I'm gonna zoom in here. I want to show you guys. I've been doing the test stitching, which I always do anytime I'm going to get a machine ready. I want to see what the test stitching tells me a lot about, how the machine is performing. Here on the bottom, you'll see that's of course the bobbin stitch, and above, this is a green thread. You'll see both straight, zigzag, and then of course there are some blind stitches I was just testing out over here. Going back to, let's see, I've got it right now. I've got it back to the straight stitch, and I'll let you guys hear it run. I want you to hear this old Ironsides get to work. This machine, and I've told all of you, once you do enough sewing machine restorations, you may discover that you can have a pretty good instinct for the kind of life a machine led. And I have a feeling that this machine led a pretty cushy life. And I say that because it was in a case, and I want to show you guys the case, and I'll explain why. Most of the time I don't really talk about the cases all that much. But this case, of course, it has the original case, and by the 70s, you could, of course, you got a case that came with the machine. It sits on a platform. It even has a little built-in straight edge down here by the machine. But there are covers. I'll take these off. And there are all sorts of little storage cubbies included. And on this side, you'll see a place where you can, of course, put things like bobbin. Well, you could put bobbins there, but top sewing thread, spools of thread. Now, for those of you who have carrying cases for your new machines today, this might not be very impressive to you. You might think, well, okay, so what? But this was not something that sewing machine carry cases had until around this time. A carrying case was a relatively simple affair. The old ones were beautifully made, very well made, but they didn't have a lot of, little compartments like that. So that's kind of nice. This machine has a cord that is in fantastic shape. It's very supple, very soft. What I'm estimating is that this machine was stored in its carry case and it was kept indoors. It might have been in a closet, but wherever it lived its life, it was heated and air conditioned. So, and very often you'll be able to tell, right? I'm pretty convinced that the person who got this machine didn't use it very much. And that's why, like I say, a lot of the mechanicals were I call them dormant, right? They were very stiff, they were dry, and so it was time to get them cleaned and lubricated. And that's what I've done. Let's see, what else? The machine also comes with just a little box of accessories. I'm including 3 original bobbins, and there's some sewing feet in here. There's a screwdriver. She has a light, of course, and the light works really well. I still have daylight here, and you can see the light switches on the back. I'm going to sew with the daylight because I prefer that when I'm making videos. Now, let's get this case here, or case cover, I should say, out of the way. Let's see, what else to tell you? Of course, the thread mounts on the back. It's a very simple thread path. It's one thread guide here, one here. You come around, of course, and you come around. There's a check spring which is behind this dial. Once you get to the 60s and 70s, they start making the tension dials really large, and so there is a check spring back here. Once it sets in the check spring, it comes inside this large guide here, goes up to the take-up arm, comes back through that same large thread guide, but on the left side, and then there's a thread guide here, and then one here, and of course she threads from the left to the right. One of the simpler setups I have noticed for a vintage sewing machine. But anyway, like I said, this is not unlike what I was discussing in one of my recent videos on Japanese clones. Remember, I was talking about the Japanese copies of Singer machines, and of course, they did the same thing with private labeling for department store chains. There were Macy's machines. There were machines for Hudson Bay. There were machines for a lot of the department stores in the U.S. But anyway, if you guys are curious, I don't always know the exact model that this is the same as, but I have actually seen Brother branded machines, and they're cream and bright orange, and it's literally the same thing, the same dials and everything. Oh, by the way, over here, of course, you have control of stitch length, and you can come here. Let's see. There is also a little place past 1, between 1 and 0. Let's zoom in, and I'm going to theorize here that what this is for, between 1 and 0, you had the ability to do a satin stitch. And on these machines, essentially what you essentially do is you shorten your stitch length, and when you're doing a zigzag, that can create what people refer to as a satin stitch. Now in this machine, it's actually listed here for you, so you don't have to guess. And then of course you can come all the way over here to 4, which is the longest stitch length. And for reverse or back tacking, you simply push in on this little button here. So anyway, and of course bobbin winder on the right. She's a relatively simple machine to learn, and yet she has a lot of features. Because remember, by this time, people were looking for, and they certainly were paying for, more than the traditional straight lock stitch sewing machine. Okay, let's see, make sure I've got this pointed where you all can see me doing the sewing I keep promising to do. All right, let's see here. Now, by the way, this machine is sitting on my Singer 185J table. This machine does not come in a table, although you can certainly put it in one if you wish. But it actually has its it actually has the base of its carrying case. All right, let's start. We'll start with a straight stitch here. I'll come right down the center between the two zigzag rows. Do a little back tacking. By the way, the material I'm sewing is a sort of a medium heavyweight cotton. It's part of a sort of it's like a cotton duck from a pair of khaki pants, and it's pretty good. You know, I would say this is. I mean, it's not canvas weight cotton, but it's fairly heavy as garment weight cloth goes. Now, I'm going to come back and I'm going to let you guys, let me zoom in here so you can see what exactly I'm sewing on. Right here, this is where, I think this was at the hem or the base of a the end of a pant leg, right, where it's been hemmed, and you'll see that. So this is pretty dense stuff, and I wanted you guys to see it mostly so you could see the you know, the strength that the machine has. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 with these two, and then 5, probably up at the top here. It's just coming across, making 6 layers of a good weight cotton, and that's a pretty flattering thing, that a good reflection on the machine is what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's come back down. I'm going to slow it down so you can see the needle control, and then speed it up. And of course, unlike machines from, say, 30, 40, 50 years before, you typically see, this has to do with the way the motors are engineered, but you typically see quicker sewing speed, right? More stitches per second or something, if that matters to you. Now, let's come over, we'll come down. Very quiet machine, actually. All machines have their own unique sound. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to, let's see, I've got some samples of blind stitch, and of course you can shorten the blind stitch just as you shorten any stitch. I'm going to do these are my the zigzag stitches I've done. You can see the other side. Really good, really fantastic tension control on this machine. Impressive. Uses 15 class bobbins, just like most of your Singer machines do. Now I'm going to shorten. I'm going to shorten the stitch length here, and let's take a look at what it will do, or we'll see what it will do for a satin stitch. Or what I call a satin stitch. Let's see here. Oh, it would help if I changed my width. There we go. Right now I'm seeing what I consider to be a short zigzag. Let's come over and shorten it even more. See what it looks like. And of course, the Italian company Necchi was the first to introduce zigzag stitching to domestic machines. Of course, it had been in industrial machines for probably a generation or two. Okay, guys, let's see. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing here. Take a look. Lets you see the variety of stitches I've been sewing here. It'll help if I put it in front of the camera. Okay, so you'll see the straight stitches, some of the blind stitches, you'll see my zigzag, and then you'll see as I shortened it over here, and as you go to the left you can see me even shortening it more and getting into what is called a satin stitch. Back in the day they used to call these embroidery stitches. Not technically embroidery, although you may have a different opinion. Let's go on the other side so that you can see. I think it might help if I pan back just a bit. You'll see, of course, the stitches on the other side, and notice here is the zigzag getting finer and finer. This is a great machine to have, whether many of you may have a free arm machine. A lot of modern machines, the new ones, are free arms, but finding a free arm that is also vintage, it's not as common. Those of us in North America, we were a little slower than other parts of the world to take on free arms. It was just, people are very tradition bound, and but anyway, this is one of the few. I think you guys saw the Janome I did the video not too long ago, and that has found a new home, and now this one is for sale. So if you like Janome or Brother, keep in mind that this is a Brother, right? It's just posing as one of the many private labels it would have been offered for. And you have to remember that the Brother company, even back as late as the late 60s, early 70s, Brother was still trying to make its way in the marketplace. And you had people who would go to department stores, and this way they could kind of get in the industry, but with a name that, a lot of these department store chains had been around 100 years. And so people, they trusted them, the guarantees were good, and people got used to the idea of machines made by companies like Brother. And the great thing was, if you went into a department store, you could probably set up credit and make payments. So I'm not kidding you when I tell you that people used to make payments on their sewing machines. You've all heard me talk about how expensive the machines and the tables were back in the day. So anyway, if you have any comments or questions about the Eaton, which is really a Brother, or maybe you have the Brother Riviera, feel free to share your comments. Let us know what you think. It's got a really strong motor, and like I say, with this particular machine, I have no actual way of knowing this, but I've seen enough machines to tell you that this machine was used seldomly. I can tell it led a good life, and it was a joy to overhaul and restore. So again, any questions, leave them there down in the comments, or tell me what you think of this machine or free arm machines in general. And stay tuned for the next video. I've got quite a few coming up soon. I've been promising all these videos, so I got to make good on those promises. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks, and we will see you next time.